Hi students, today we'll solve a JEE Advanced 2026 question from Ray Optics, as you can see on your screen. This looks interesting, so let us try to solve this question. JEE Advanced is known to give you a lot of cool questions, and I think this is one of the coolest that is given. Those of you who know the ray optics and the prism theory already, you can skip the theory part that I'm going to discuss now, and you can directly jump into the solution. You can go a little bit forward in the video. And those of you who are completely new to ray optics or completely new to prism, bear with me and listen to the theory, learn first the theory, and then try to generate the idea that how I am solving this. So first of all, for a prism is basically a slab of glass which is cut in the shape of a triangle. So this is like in 3D it looks like this. Okay. This is basically the 3D representation, but the problem is given in 2D. So now this is a ray of light that is incident, and here is a normal. This is the angle of incidence, and the ray bends towards the normal because the light is going from rarer medium to denser medium. Now you draw the normal here. If this angle is called R1, this angle is called R2, and here the ray of light is coming out. This is the emergent ray, and this angle is called E. Now suppose if the prism is not there, then light would have continued this path, but because of the prism the light went into the green path. That means this is the final path and this is the initial path. Deviation is defined as the angle between the final path and the initial path. So if I extend this final ray and this is the initial ray, this angle is called delta. Delta is the deviation, the angular deviation. Now, how much will be this angle? This is going to be I1 minus R1, right? From simple geometry. Similarly, this angle will be how much? This will be I2 minus R2. And we all know that sum of the interior angle equal to the exterior angle. So from simple geometry, I can write deviation delta is equal to I1 minus R1 plus E minus R2, right? Which is I have taken as I2. I'll write this as I1. So you can see deviation has become how much? I1 plus E minus common R1 plus R2. Now R1 plus R2 is basically equal to the angle of the prism, capital A. Angle of prism is also known as refracting angle of prism. How I am getting that? If you see P, Q, R and S, this is a quadrilateral, right? What is the angle Q? You can see from the diagram it is 90 degree. What is the angle S? It is also 90 degree. What is the sum of the total angle of a quadrilateral? It is 360 degree. So this is 90, this is 90, 180. That means the angle of prism A and the angle R will be how much? It must be equal to 180 degree. But what is angle R? If you focus on the triangle QSR, you can see this angle is how much? R1. This angle is how much? R2. That means what will be the value of the angle capital R? It's going to be pi minus R1 plus R2. That means capital A plus pi minus R1 plus R2 must be equal to how much? Pi, 180 degree for a triangle QRS. So if you cancel the pi, you can easily prove A is equal to R1 plus R2. So what's the basic deviation formula? The deviation formula is coming as I1 plus E minus A, or angle of incidence, the initial angle of incidence plus the angle of emergence minus angle of prism will give you the angular deviation. It's a formula. So now what I can do here is that I can write this as root under I1 minus root under E whole square plus 2 root under I1 E minus A. Now we all know that the square will have the least value how much? 0. So when the square becomes least, that means that square becomes 0, then your delta will be minimum. So what is the minimum deviation? The minimum deviation condition is that I1 is equal to E. The angle of incidence must be equal to angle of emergence. You can see easily that if I1 and E are equal, then by Snell's law, R1, if I1 equal to E, then from Snell's law, you can easily see that R1 is equal to R2. But R1 plus R2 is how much? It is equal to A. That means R1 is equal to R2 is equal to A by 2 in what condition? In the minimum deviation condition. So this is a basic theory that you have to know, and this I think is included also in class 10 ray optics syllabus. So if you know this theory, you are good to go with this problem. So let us try to focus on the problem, okay, and get into the solution. So here is the question. So I'll just first start from the question and the option A, and then we'll start slowly going to the option B, C and D. So I'll just zoom into this, okay. Now what the question is saying, see, if both the prisms are at minimum deviation condition, so if both the prisms are at minimum deviation condition, then a condition is given. So we all know that if the first prism is in minimum deviation condition, then R1 equal to R2 is equal to how much? It is going to be A1 by 2, because for the first prism, the angle of prism is A1. And also for the second prism, it is going to be R2, or we can say this angle is R3 and this angle is R4. So R3 is equal to R4 is equal to A2 by 2. Understood? Now let me call this point as point P. Now see, it is also given that this A1 B1 side and A2 B2 side are parallel, and if you see the normal drawn is parallel to x-axis. That means the normal is, the perpendicular is x-axis. This means A1 B1 and A2 B2 will be what? Parallel to y-axis. So if this angle is E1, then what will be this double angle? That's going to be 90 minus E1. So if I extend this line, this is 90. So this means this angle will be how much? E1. And if I draw the normal here, this is the angle of reflection. And what is angle of reflection here? It is 90 minus E1. This means this is also going to be how much? Angle of incidence is equal to angle of reflection is also going to be 90 minus E1. So if I extend this and if I extend this, they cut here and this is 90. So from simple geometry, I can see that this angle I2 and the angle E1 must be equal, because 90 minus E1 plus 90 plus I2 is equal to 180 degree, and 90 plus 90 becomes 180, 180 cancels out, and that gives you I2 is equal to E1. Okay. So for the first prism, Snell's law at point P, what will be the condition? That is going to be sine R1, right, or R2. You can call this angle as R2. This angle as R2. So if I use sine R2, N1 is the refractive index of the first prism, multiplied with sine R2, and what will be the value of sine R2? That's going to be sine A1 by 2 is equal to how much? It's going to be, because outside is air, so 1 into sine E1. So I got the first equation, sine E1 is equal to N1 into sine A1 by 2. Now for the second surface, at the surface A2 B2, for the second prism at the surface A2 B2, if I use Snell's law, it is going to be how much? Sine I2 is equal to N2 into sine R3. This angle is R3, but R3 must be equal to how much? It will be A2 by 2, right? So, but sine I2 is also, this angle I2 is equal to E1. So this means sine E1 must be equal to N2 into sine A2 by 2 for the second prism. So for the first prism, sine E1 is equal to N1 sine A2, A1 by 2, and for the second prism, it is N2 into sine A2 by 2, and both are sine E1. So this means that N1 into sine A1 by 2 must be equal to N2 into sine A2 by 2. So if I do N2 by N1, this comes as sine A1 by 2 divided by sine A2 by 2, which is option A. So this means option A is correct. So I hope you got this understood. Now let us jump into the option B. So what the option B is saying. So option B. Option B is saying what? If prism 2 is at minimum deviation condition, so I'll just get to the diagram so that you can understand. So this is the diagram and this is the option. In this case, the question is asking if prism 2 is in minimum deviation condition, prism 2 in minimum deviation condition, what will be the equation? That's going to be sine I2 is equal to N2 into sine R3, which is A2 by 2, right? So see, the right hand side has matched, but this is equal to sine I2, but I2 is equal to how much? It is equal to sine E1. But what the option is saying, the option is giving us I1, sine I1. The I1 is this angle, and there is no relation between I1 and E1, right? Because I1 will be equal to E1 if the prism 1 is in minimum deviation. But the question is saying if prism 2 is at minimum deviation, it is not mentioning anything about the prism 1. So we don't know whether prism 1 is in minimum deviation or not. So that means I have no idea about this. So this is always true is an option that is wrong. If prism 2 is at minimum deviation condition, then sine I2 is equal to N2 into sine A2 by 2, or sine E1 equal to N2 into sine A2 by 2. But E1 and I1 are not equal, because E1 and I1 will be equal if the prism 1 is in minimum deviation condition. But the question is not mentioning anything about that. So this means option B is incorrect. Now let us go for option C. So let us get the problem here again. I'll cut the questions, the diagram, and then I'll get the option C also. Okay. Let me remove this part and just focus on option C. Okay. Now they see the question. The question is saying that if prism 1 and prism 2 are thin prism. Okay. Now for thin prism, I'll just go into the theory again a little bit. So for thin prism, what happens, that the deviation is equal to mu minus 1 into A. It's a formula. So this you have to know for minimum deviation only under the condition what? The prism is thin prism. So this question is saying that the prism is a thin prism. That means delta is equal to mu minus 1 into A is now active for both the prism 1 as well as for prism 2. Okay. So with the angles of deviation delta m1. So what will be the delta m1? Delta m1 will be equal to n1 is the refractive index of the first prism minus 1 into angle of prism, which is a1, and delta m2 will be equal to n2 minus 1 into angle of prism a2. So a1 equal to how much? It is going to be delta m1 divided by n1 minus 1, and a2 is also going to be delta m2 divided by n2 minus 1. But see, if they are adding this and they are getting theta, that means this theta is now included, this theta. So how to now connect this theta with a1 and a2, how to relate them? So to do that, what I am going to do, we can see this double angle will be how much? It's going to be a1 by 2. Join here. This angle is how much? This is a1 by 2. This angle is 90. So this will be how much? This will be 90 pi by 2 minus a1 by 2, because then only the summation will become how much? The summation will become 180 degree. So this is 90 minus a by 2. This is 90, and this is a1 by 2. So the red one is a1 by 2, this is 90, and this is 90 minus a1 by 2. From the same geometry, on the right hand side, you will get 90 minus pi by 2 minus a2 by 2. But the triangle theta 90 minus a1 by 2 and 90 minus a2 by 2, the summation will be how much? It is going to be 180 degree. So theta plus pi by 2 minus a1 by 2 plus pi by 2 minus a2 by 2 must be equal to pi. So you can cancel and you get theta is equal to a1 plus a2 divided by 2. That's your theta, right, in terms of a1 and a2. Now add them then. So we have got theta is equal to a1 plus a2 by 2. So how much will be a1 plus a2? So if I add a1 plus a2, that gives me delta m1 divided by n1 minus 1 plus delta m2 divided by n2 minus 1. And now I'll multiply both sides with half to get that by 2. So if I multiply both sides with half, that is multiplied with half 1 by 2, right? And this is equal to theta. So theta is equal to how much? Take the half inside, delta m1 divided by 2 into n1 minus 1 plus delta m2 2 into n2 minus 1, which is coming as option C. So option C is also correct. This option is also correct. Okay. Now let's go for option D. Let's take the problem again. And let me crop out the question for us to understand, and then crop out the option D. Here is the question and here is your option D. So option D is saying what? If the prism 1 is at minimum deviation condition. So prism 1 is now at minimum deviation condition. So we know that if prism 1 is in minimum deviation condition, then R1 is equal to R2 is equal to how much? A1 by 2, right? And apply the Snell's law at this point. So what will be the Snell's law? That's going to be sine E1. The Snell's law will be sine E1, 1 into sine E1 is equal to N1 into sine A1 by 2. But your E1, as we have proved earlier, that this E1 is equal to how much? If you draw the normal, this E1 is equal to I2. So what we are getting? We are getting sine I2. So sine I2 is equal to N1 into sine A1 by 2, which is obviously again true. So if prism 1 is in minimum deviation condition, then this is also correct. So option D is also correct. So what we got as the answers? We got D, C, B is incorrect, and A is also correct. So A, C, D are correct options for this question. So I hope you liked the video, liked the explanation. So give it a thumbs up and do subscribe. We'll see. I'll solve more JEE 2026 question in coming videos. Thank you for watching. Tada. See you in the next video.